This is Special Agent Sparky reporting from a local TV studio within Denton County, Texas. For the foreseeable future, I have been assigned to investigate some strange cases in the area. Not the cases you'll find in official reports or news briefings. These are stories buried under piles of speculation and decades of fear. This is where the real work begins. The kind that doesn't come with answers, just more questions. This time, we will be investigating a particularly popular paranormal hotspot, an iron truss relic swallowed by the woods, a place where hooves echo against wood, where red eyes stalk from the tree lines, and where you'll ask who's out there and you may never get an answer. Some say it's just a story. Me, on the other hand, I think there's something deeper and more sinister going on at Old Alton Bridge, and it's been happening for a very long time. Welcome to the Denton Files. Each episode we investigate the strange, the suspicious, and the stories that never made it to the courtrooms, headlines, or case logs. Stories that live between the facts, right where fear takes root. Today's case: is there truth behind the haunting tales of this so-called half-man, half-goat that lurks in the woods near Old Alton Bridge? Was there really a man named Oscar Washburn who vanished one night under violent circumstances? Or is the legend just that, a legend? I'll sift through the rumors, retrace the roots of the myth, and try to separate spectral fiction from historical fact, and by the end, you can decide for yourself. Is Goatman's Bridge just a scary story, or something that was supposed to stay hidden? For decades, the bridge has been the focus of alleged supernatural events, criminal rumors, and unverified sightings. This report aims to document the legend, analyze its origins, and determine the legitimacy of the claims surrounding it. Old Alton Bridge was constructed in 1884, originally a carriage route. It connected the small town of Alton, now a ghost town, to Denton and Copper Canyon. The bridge is narrow, made of rusted iron, and stretches across Hickory Creek. Today, it's closed to vehicle traffic, but it's not the rust of age that draws attention. It's what people say happens there after dark. Witnesses have reported figures standing on the bridge that vanish without a trace. Others claim to hear hooves on the pavement when no animals are present. Most disturbing are reports of a creature, part man, part goat, with red, glowing eyes that watches silently from the woods. Some say he speaks, some say he growls, but nearly all who tell the story believe in one name, the Goatman. The legend most commonly told in Denton traces back to a man named Oscar Washburn. According to oral history, Washburn was a black goat farmer who lived with his family near the bridge in the 1800s or early 1900s. He was known locally as a successful goat farmer, offering all kinds of products to the community. But not everyone in the area appreciated his success, especially not during a time when racial violence was widespread. The story goes that one night, a group of Klansmen dragged Washburn from his home, brought him to Old Alton Bridge, tied a noose around his neck, and threw him off the side. When they looked down, he was gone. No body, no splash, just empty rope swinging in the wind. In a rage, the men reportedly returned to his home and slaughtered his family. Since then, haunting things have been seen and heard near the bridge. As chilling as the story is, investigation into historical records reveals significant inconsistencies. Despite numerous retellings, there is no census data, death record, or property registry confirming the existence of Oscar Washburn in that time or place. We found no newspaper articles describing a lynching at the bridge, no police records, no verifiable documentation at all. Historians suggest that the tale may have been a modern fabrication, perhaps invented as recently as the 1960s, and retroactively tied to an older site to add credibility. What we do know is this: the Goatman legend shares eerie similarities with other regional myths. There's a Goatman in Maryland, another in Kentucky. All of them seem to follow a pattern: rural bridges, mysterious disappearances, and monstrous hybrids born of cruelty and fear. The added rumors of satanic rituals near Old Alton Bridge, common in the 1980s and 90s, are also unconfirmed. While animal bones and graffiti have been found in the woods nearby, there is no hard evidence of organized ritualistic activity. Most of what's been discovered can likely be attributed to teenagers looking to amplify the myth. Still, the legend refuses to die, and there are things we can't explain. In the past 15 years, multiple independent visitors, paranormal investigators, amateur ghost hunters, and locals alike have reported consistent strange phenomenon: malfunctioning electronics, battery drains, sudden nausea, whispers caught on audio, growls with no clear source, and some claim they were scratched, shoved, or even followed home. Scientific equipment has occasionally picked up electromagnetic spikes on and near the bridge in areas with no known power source. That's not proof, but that's not easily dismissed. So whether this is mass hysteria, suggestion, or something we don't yet understand, the psychological and emotional response to Goatman's Bridge is very real. Legends like this don't just scare people, they reflect something deeper. Some researchers believe the Goatman represents the ghost of American injustice, a spirit born of violence, silenced voices, and forgotten names. Others say it's just a story, a scary tale told to keep kids out of the woods at night. But maybe it's both. Maybe the truth of Goatman's Bridge isn't in the records, but in the way people act when they're there. The silence, the cold, the stories told in a whisper. So if you ever find yourself standing on Old Alton Bridge and the wind goes still, and the night feels too quiet, think twice before calling his name, because someone or something might just answer. Every good story is built on a foundation. Some are solid, others are rotted through. So before we can understand the legend, we have to understand the bones it's built on: steel, soil, and silence. This is Old Alton Bridge. Originally designed for horses and carts, eventually it was adapted for cars, but barely. The bridge is named for a place most people have never heard of, a place that doesn't exist anymore: Old Alton. Alton was once the county seat of Denton County, a position of political power in the 19th century Texas, but it didn't last. Between bad location planning, poor access to water, and rising tensions in the region, Alton withered before it ever grew. By 1957, just a few years after being declared the county seat, the title was moved back to Denton, and Alton disappeared. No buildings, no businesses, no post office, just land reclaimed by trees. A cemetery and a bridge are all that remains. So the bridge outlived the town it was built to serve. It became a relic, a quiet connector between places that forgot what they were once connected to. But in the early 20th century, when the Goatman legend allegedly took root, Texas was anything but quiet. Between 1880 and 1930, radical terror lynchings were tragically common throughout the American South, and Texas was no exception. According to the Equal Justice Initiative, at least 335 documented lynchings of black Texans occurred during this period. Many weren't recorded at all. Many were ignored. Some were carried out by mobs, others were quiet, hidden, with no consequences, no justice, and no names remembered. The legend of the Goatman fits this historical context. A black man, successful, self-sufficient, is targeted by white supremacists, hanged from a bridge, erased, and in that erasure, a monster is born. But here's the thing. That story, it's powerful. It feels true. It should be true, given everything we know about the time. But when we try to verify it, when we go looking for Oscar Washburn, the trail goes cold. We checked U.S. Census records from the early 1900s, no sign of an Oscar Washburn in Denton County. Not as a resident, not as a farmer, not under any variation of the name. no property deeds linked to the Washburn family near the bridge, no newspaper reports from that era of a lynching on or near Old Alton Bridge, no court records, no missing persons cases, nothing that ties a real human being to the horror story that has been passed around for generations. Now, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. Many lynchings were unreported by design. Sometimes the entire community would conspire to bury the evidence, erase the victim, and keep an act out of public records. In the Jim Crow South, silence was a weapon. But as investigators, we deal in two things: what can be proven and what can't. Right now, Oscar Washburn lives entirely in the space in between. The legend may not have grown from a single victim. It may have been born from dozens, all of the untold names, the untold faces, who never got their stories written down. In a way, the Goatman becomes a composite spirit, a warning, a manifestation of all that pain, injustice, and forgotten violence, the kind this country is still reckoning with. And maybe that's why the legend sticks. Maybe it's why it survives. It fills the vacuum that history tried to leave empty. Then there's the matter of the timing. Most tellings of the Goatman legend places the incident sometime in the 1930s or earlier, but the legend itself didn't surface publicly until the late 1960s, when Denton locals started warning teenagers not to linger on the bridge too long at night. Some folklorists argue that the gap is a red flag, that the story was a product of urban legend culture, not historical truth. A scary tale told to scare kids, just like Bloody Mary or The Hook. But even if it started as a story, the details came from somewhere. Fear doesn't come from nowhere, neither does folklore. So what do we know? We know the bridge was real, built in 1884, outlived the town it served. We know Denton County, like much of Texas, was home to racial violence, documented and undocumented. We know that no official record of Oscar Washburn has been found, but we also know that silence in the archive doesn't mean silence in real life. And maybe the scariest part of the story isn't the monster at all. Maybe it's the idea that something did happen on that bridge, and that the only trace left behind is a ghost story. That's the real terror of Old Alton. Not red eyes in the dark, but a past so painful, so buried, that only the legend remains. Daylight doesn't do much to calm this place. I arrived in the evening, the sun was out, the trees were still, but there was something about Goatman's Bridge that didn't sit right. Something that lingers beneath the surface even when everything looks normal. The bridge itself is rusted over, built from wrought iron and old nails. It creaks when you walk across it, just enough to remind you that you're somewhere old, somewhere forgotten. Just a dirt parking lot, a worn path, and a structure that feels like it's been left to rot. I spent some time on the bridge taking some footage. You can feel the weight of it, a quiet pressure, like you're being watched, but nothing moves. Looking down, Hickory Creek runs below the bridge. With the recent storms in Denton County, the river is higher than usual. The banks are lined with twisted trees and thick brush. Plenty of places for shadows to hide, even in the daylight. Most of the surface of the bridge is covered in graffiti, layers of spray paint, some fresh, some faded by years of sun and rain, and always the same name comes up among the initials in hearts and drawings: Goatman. People don't just tag the bridge, they leave messages for him. I followed a trail off the side of the bridge. There's a narrow path that winds along the creek. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just trying to feel the place. Not far off the trail, I found a large statue that had been smashed and graffitied with satanic symbols. The deeper I went into the woods, the quieter it got. No birds, no wind, just the sound of my own boots on the path. I stopped recording for a moment, just listened. There was nothing. You'd be surprised how fast the woods change when the sun disappears. The bridge feels different as night approaches, more claustrophobic. The trees close in. Every sound seems louder, closer. I didn't see the Goatman. No red eyes in the dark, no hoof prints on the bridge, but I didn't leave feeling alone either. Sometimes the story doesn't show itself when you want it to. Sometimes it waits, watches, and follows. It's easy to joke about ghosts in the daylight, but at dusk, standing on a rusted bridge in the middle of nowhere, Even the most rational mind starts to wander. The bridge is real, the tensions are high, and the feeling people report, fear, paranoia, and invisible pressure. They're not just storytelling devices. I felt them myself. I recorded them. I stood in the silence and waited to hear something that might never speak in the daylight. Every legend starts with a whisper. Sometimes it's a cautionary tale, sometimes it's an echo of something unspeakable, and sometimes, like with the Goatman, it's a puzzle with no clean edge, no clear answer, and no body to bring it back to reality. This chapter isn't about the bridge, it's about the why. Why do people believe? Why do people pass these stories down? And why, generation after generation, we keep coming back to the same monsters in the dark. What we're dealing with here isn't just folklore, it's psychology. It's a pattern recognition, fear, trauma, and the deep human need to explain the things that don't make sense. Urban legends, by definition, are modern myths passed through word of mouth or rumor, often unverifiable, almost always compelling. The Goatman? He's not alone. In fact, he's part of a much bigger file. Let me show you the pattern. First, we've got the Pope Lick monster just outside Louisville, Kentucky. Half man, half goat. Said to lure victims onto a train trestle where they're hit and killed. No official deaths were ever directly tied to the creature, but several fatalities have occurred on that track. Whether they went up there because of the story, or the story came after the deaths, doesn't matter. People died, the legend stays. Then there's the Bunny Man Bridge in Fairfax County, Virginia. Back in the 70s, locals reported sightings of a man in a bunny suit holding an axe, terrorizing people near a remote overpass. No suspect was ever caught, but the story grew. And now, every Halloween, hundreds gather at the bridge, waiting for him to reappear. Same storylines, same bones, different masks. So what does the evidence suggest? As investigators, we're trained to find patterns, and when you look closely, you'll see one core psychological structure behind all these legends: fear, location, and moral weight. We fear the unknown, we assign that fear to a place, and then we embed the fear into a lesson. It's not just about the Goatman, it's about what the Goatman represents. He's not just some cryptid hiding in the woods. He's standing in for injustice, punishment, and transgression. He guards the boundary between what's allowed and what's forbidden. Here's the critical piece. Urban legends aren't accidents. They're mirrors. They reflect cultural trauma, community, anxieties, and historical silence. They show us what we're afraid to name. Whether or not Oscar Washburn existed doesn't change the fact that his story rings true for many. The racial injustice, the erasure, the silence, the pain is real, even if the monster isn't. And that's the social function of legends like this. They give form to the formless. They make the invisible suffering visible, even if they have to wrap it in horns and glowing red eyes. And yet there's another angle. There's a thrill to these stories. They bond people, sitting around a fire, walking out to a bridge with friends, daring each other to say a name or stay past midnight. That's a ritual. That's community. Legends, even the scary ones, are a way to process fear together. When people tell the story of the Goatman, they're not just talking about what they fear. They're talking about where they came from, what they've seen, what they've heard passed down. The story becomes the medium, and the fear becomes something they can survive. Because if you can name the monster, you can survive the night. So what does this mean for us? It means the Goatman may not be real, but the need for the Goatman is. He fills the gaps in the history books left blank. He patrols the edge of our fears and dares us to look closer. And whether we believe in him or not, he tells us who we are when the lights go out. The official records may be empty, the evidence may be inconclusive, but in Denton County, the story doesn't just live, it moves. I've spent the last few weeks collecting stories from the community. Let's start with one from r/ghosts. A 20-year-old woman and her family visited Goatman's Bridge in Denton, Texas, a site tied to a violent, radical history and haunted legends. On Father's Day night, for a ghost hunting outing, after hiking several trails near the bridge, The group encountered a disturbing graffiti-covered altar allegedly used for ritualistic sacrifices. While no intense paranormal activity occurred on site, beyond her father feeling a mysterious tap, things changed drastically afterwards. As soon as she got back in the car, she was overcome with sudden, intense nausea and a deep sense of dread. Once home, the situation escalated into something more sinister. She described an overwhelming shift in her identity, claiming she no longer recognized herself in the mirror and felt taken over by a violent presence. Her boyfriend noticed the change, and she experienced physical detachment, violent thoughts, and behavior that scared both of them. The psychological and physical after effects, including nausea, disassociation, and disturbing images and photos, continues to this day. She believes something attached to her that night and is either still within her or has left lasting damage. This experience raises some powerful and unsettling questions. One of the most striking elements is the sudden shift in the storyteller's personality and perception of self after leaving the site, classic signs often associated with possession or spiritual attachment. Her description of violent impulses, emotional detachment, and identity confusion echoes both paranormal accounts and disassociative psychological episodes. The nausea and lasting symptoms further suggest that whether this is spiritual, psychological, or both, it had a real and ongoing effect on her well-being. The connection between the bridge's violent history and her reaction also shouldn't be overlooked. Paranormal investigators often cite that sites marked by historical trauma, especially racially motivated violence, can carry powerful residual energy. Some reports suggest that women are more vulnerable to spiritual activities at Goatman's Bridge, which could explain why she was affected more severely than her companions. The ritualistic symbols they encountered, particularly at the altar, might have intensified the atmosphere and could have invited something darker to follow them home. Ultimately, her experience highlights an important question. Should people treat visits to haunted or historical violent sites with more caution, especially when the effects can linger long after the trip is over? Next is a more recent story from 2024, posted on r/nosleep. A paranormal enthusiast and her friend visited the infamous Goatman's Bridge in Denton, Texas, hoping for an eerie yet fun ghost hunting adventure. After arriving near sunset, the group explored a trail through a dense, swampy forest where the atmosphere quickly turned unsettling. Strange noises, including growling and a piercing scream resembling a young girl, heightened their anxiety. When they eventually crossed the historic bridge to explore a darker trail on the other side, the narrator spotted what looked like a human-shaped white object resembling a wrapped body. This triggered intense physical reactions: nausea, dizziness, panic, and a sense of overwhelming spiritual presence. The group quickly fled back to the bridge and used a paranormal investigation app equipped with an SLS camera. Shockingly, the app registered full stick figure shapes both on the bridge and later in the dark parking lot near their car, matching a friend's claim of having seen two people standing there seconds earlier. Though they never encountered the fabled Goatman himself, the experience left him physically and emotionally shaken. The narrator firmly believes there's a dark, malevolent presence in the area, something deeply wrong with the energy that emerges after sunset. This story raises some compelling questions about how certain environments can profoundly affect our physical and psychological state. Whether or not one believes in the paranormal, the visceral reaction the narrator experienced, especially the nausea, fear, and sudden weakness, mirrors common reports in other alleged demonic or haunted locations. The SLS camera detection and the group's collective experiences, like hearing the same scream and growl, add credibility to the idea that something unexplainable was occurring. It's highly noteworthy how multiple group members confirmed the same sensation or visuals, reinforcing that the fear wasn't just imagined or suggestive. The experience also touches on an important theme in modern paranormal exploration. How far should we go into the pursuit of the unknown? The group set out for an adventure but found themselves faced with something much darker than expected. Yet the narrator still expresses a desire to explore further. Goatman's Bridge, much like other infamous haunted sites, seemed to act as a spiritual magnet, especially after dark. Whether it's tied to residual energy from historical violence or a more literal demonic force, the story adds another layer to the bridge's already chilling reputation and leaves open the question of what exactly is waiting there for those brave enough to go looking. Not every local believes in the Goatman, but even the skeptics agree something's off about that place. Some say it's a magnet for energy. Others say it's just power of suggestion. But one thing's consistent. People avoid the bridge at night, not because they believe in monsters, but because it feels wrong. Then there are the personal stories, not dramatic, not violent, but eerie in their simplicity. Many have reported their cars being mysteriously unlocked when they know they locked the door. Others return from the bridge with scratches and bruises. Something is going on here that no one can explain. Here's the thing about folklore. It's not just about belief. It's about behavior. And when you have this many people, generations of them, avoiding the same patch of land, telling the same twisted story, and feeling the same unease, that's worth paying attention to. Is the Goatman real? Maybe not. But fear is. And this bridge carries a lot of it. People don't need proof to stay away. Just a feeling. Just a whisper. Just enough shadow to make you question what's waiting in the woods. Old Alton Bridge, steel bones rusting under Texas heat, a place where whispers stick to the trees and names vanish from history. Over the course of this investigation, we've reviewed local folklore, historic records, field evidence, eyewitness accounts, and psychological profiles of regional legends. Here's what we know. The bridge was built in 1884, meant to connect a town that no longer exists. Oscar Washburn, the alleged Goatman, has no official trace in the records, and yet the stories persist. Hoofbeats on iron, red eyes in the brush, heavy air that presses against your chest like a held breath. Too many stories to ignore, too many silences to feel loud. Officially, the file on Goatman's Bridge remains inconclusive, but unofficially, the shadows speak, and they don't always lie. Legends like these don't die because they're proven true. They live because they explain something truth won't touch. Maybe Goatman is just fear with a name, or maybe he's still out there, waiting, watching, just beyond the edge of the tree line. But the work doesn't stop here. Another file's been pulled from the archives. This one, strange, even by Denton standards. February 10th, 2001, a garage sale like no other. No labels, no logic, just a masked figure on a porch, responding to offers with outlandish counter demands. $500,000. Performance art, they said. A prank, a joke, a riff on capitalism. But years later, people still talk about him. Some say he was just a student in a mask. Others say he was something older, something that knew too much about the value we place on things, and what we were willing to trade away. We'll be reopening this file next time. Until then, don't name your price too quickly and keep your TVs tuned. This is Agent Sparky. The Denton Files will return.